Hello and welcome to the Seven Seals Summit, Gateway to the New Earth. I am joined today by my dear friend Sumaya O'Grady. Some of you may recognize her from the Seven Seals Summit before. She's joined us every year, which I'm delighted by. And so, what you might not know a lot about the work that she's done, and Sumaya is just a wealth of information. She's done a lot of different practices and traditions, and she's brought together what she's taken from those to what is her philosophy of today, and she's going to share some of that with us, so I'm super excited. Thank you so much for joining us, Sumaya, and why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Okay, well, thanks for inviting me.
Yes.
Well, what I do is something that I haven't managed to condense into a 30-second elevator speech. So you'll get the longer version here. I really guide people at this stage in the work that I do. I guide people into clearing old resentments, because I have found that that is the one thing that drags people down. If you summarize all the things that are upsetting to people in their lives, and I'm including myself in this, it comes down to resentment. And resentment really, it's old, congealed anger. And it's sometimes the old stuff is like concrete. It's just been sitting back there in the unconscious for a long time. And, well, we forget about it until something happens to spark that. And then it's like an iron filing going toward a magnet, and poof, there it is, and it's blowing up in your face, and you think, why am I so mad about that? It's probably happened to everyone. But the reason is because there's another similar resentment that never got worked out, and it's just sitting there like a big rock pile somewhere in the unconscious. And that's kind of an unpleasant image, I guess, but that's what happens. And what I have found is, if you look even deeper to what is the cause of the resentment, and I found this to be true of every healer I've ever talked to, at the bottom of all pain, emotional pain, is the lack of self-love and not having forgiven other people for their mistakes and not forgiving yourself for your own mistakes. And so the lack of self-love is such an important key. And yet, if I tell people I work with self-love, their eyes kind of glaze over and they step back and say, oh, how nice, I have plenty of self-love. In fact, I took myself to the spa the other day.
I think they call it self-care.
Yeah, self-care. I know, it's not the same thing, really. It's not a bad start, but
yeah.
It's the baby step, maybe. And so I have come to realize that I need to help people understand more about self-love by approaching it from this other way. It's really, how do we clear our own anger at ourselves for all the things that we've done wrong? You know, people beat themselves up about this. Well, we'll get to that later, but
yeah. I actually do a lot of work with that, with clearing resentment from people towards themselves and others, and it can affect your communication channel. So and that's one of the reasons why, because I do coach people on how to make a deeper connection with their own guidance system, and when that stuff is clogging up the pipes, it's like it's keeping you from making that deeper connection. And it also, part of that is because it sits over the solar plexus. Oh. And it can also make you physically ill. I've dealt with resentment myself, so this is one of the things that I've dealt with, and it'll go after like your liver and your gallbladder and your nervous system. That's where the resentment likes to lie, in the physical like vessel and physical health.
Yes.
And so with that in mind, what's so important about forgiveness?
Well, as you were saying, it does have a physical component, and it can block your inner sight, your inner intuition, basically, because you're sitting on too much unworked out stuff. And it can also cause you to be emotional about things that really normally wouldn't carry a charge. But if there's already a pile of resentment around those kinds of things, then poof, the emotional upset happens, and then you step back and go, why did I get so upset about that? You know, I think probably everyone has had some kind of an experience like that. And one of the things that also confuses people about forgiveness is that it's not condoning. If someone hurt you badly and was really mean and harmed you, you don't have to condone their actions to forgive, because forgiveness is about you. It's about letting go, releasing the hold that that energy has on your body, mind, and spirit. It has a big hold on your heart, and literally can make your heart get heavier. I think the heart is particularly susceptible, and also for me, it's the nervous system. You know, I think we carry our old resentment in different places. You probably found that when you work with people.
And myself.
And yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, really. I know this because I've done a tremendous amount of work, forgiveness work on myself. So it is like carrying a backpack full of radioactive fluids, toxic fluids, and you're carrying it around, or sometimes it feels like rocks, heavy rocks, and you add one rock and it's not so bad. You're walking along, you don't feel the weight of that rock, but then you add another and another and another, and eventually over time you still don't notice how heavy the backpack's getting, but at some point it drags you down and you end up being like that. Your posture changes, your heart gets heavy, you have health problems. And that's what it is. We have to unload those rocks. And you don't have to always do it one by one. Sometimes you clear one big thing and poof, a whole bunch of other smaller things were attached to that. So
yeah, I help people. I have some of my clients do singing or toning or chanting, or even just listening to music that kind of pulls on the heartstrings. So that way we don't have to bring up all the old stuff to kind of move it. And also physical movement can let some of that resentment out of the body. And I do find that sometimes when I'm getting to something that is difficult for someone, like a very difficult thing to talk about, forgiving others, is that I'll do the Ho'oponopono with people. And when it comes to someone that they're holding on to and it's been a huge trauma and a wound for them, I can feel them kind of like, oh, I don't know if I can do this, and I'm and I have to let them know it's not for them, it's for you.
Right.
And all you have to do is be willing, and then God will show you how. God will take care of the rest. And it's just relieving yourself of all of this baggage to make more room for the light to weave through you.
I agree. And all those methods can work. I think crying over sad movies helps a lot.
I take people to cry movies when they're in a funk. I'm like, look, come on, let's go. We're gonna watch a sad movie, and you're just gonna get it out.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You never know what's going to do it to you.
Yeah.
You're watching something and nobody else is crying, but you know.
Oh man, Rocket Man pulled on my heartstrings hard. I cried for a week after I watched that movie.
Cocoon did it for me.
Missing home a little bit.
Yes, missing home. I thought, well, why didn't they come and pick me up? You know, they picked up these other people. So you never know.
So I can't express just the profound impact forgiveness has on your life. And also, I was talking to a client about this, and they were asking about clearing karma, and they said, how do I clear the karma? And I said, well, you forgive.
Yeah.
Forgive yourself and others, and you release that quantum entanglement that keeps you coming back over and over and over with them. So can you tell me a little bit about what's your personal experience with forgiveness and why it's so important to you? Why did it really resonate with you?
Well, I didn't, like many of the people I meet, I didn't really think I had that big a deal going where I had to forgive people. This is why I have to laugh, you know, compassionately laugh, you know.
I'm fine.
When
Perfect.
somebody says, yes, I don't have to forgive anybody. Stay away from me, you know. Forgiveness is the F word now. It's the new F word. So I made a very deep spiritual connection with the Ascended Master, Saint Germain, and some of you might know this, that he is the Ascended Master who's on the seventh ray, which is called the violet flame. And one of the powerful uses of the violet flame is forgiveness. So I started really deepening my understanding of the violet flame, and I asked Saint Germain for a spiritual practice, and he said, well, you could sit in the violet flame for 15 minutes every day. And you know, I'm like an old champion meditator, and I thought, huh, I could do it for an hour, you know. What was I thinking?
I love how we just invite stuff to come up.
I know.
Like, it's that be careful what you wish for.
Exactly, exactly. There's a little case of spiritual arrogance there,
Yeah.
you know. I'm sure he was chuckling at me. So I realized, you know, I have been a meditation teacher for many decades in different traditions, and so of course I designed forgiveness meditation using the violet flame, and I found it to be an incredibly powerful tool. Like what you were mentioning, all the other ways that you help people with that, whether it's toning, sound, you know, a movie or whatever. And the violet flame is another one of those powerful spiritual tools. So I did the meditation, I went in and I started using it, and I called in a couple of people that I thought, yeah, I have some leftover stuff with these people. 2 hours later, I was still slogging through the muck and the mire. Eventually, though, what I discovered is after I cleared the more obvious ones, and I had put out basically an intention to the universe that I want to forgive the people in my past. So they started lining up inside my head, and people whose existence I had forgotten, blocked out maybe, I had forgotten, started showing up inside my head, ready to be forgiven. And I thought, who are these people? I didn't remember them. I hardly remembered what happened. So I went into meditation, used the violet flame, and pretty soon I was able to clear that. And then I realized, oh, there's a theme here. I have a whole bunch of people who are in this theme of certain kinds of things that were triggers for me, and that I had a role to play in some of those things. But eventually they lined up. There were so many people, I felt like I was on a cosmic conveyor belt. It began to feel like Lucy in the chocolate factory. You know, I couldn't process it quickly enough. So I learned a lot in that process, and that was some of my personal experience. And so I've been in the trenches with this, and some of the forgiveness was very, very difficult. It was, brought up a whole lot of stuff for me, and I had to forgive myself for my part in what happened. So that's sort of the short version.
Yeah, it reminds me of that like inspirational saying of like holding on to resentment and anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to get sick.
Yes, that's it. Yes, that's totally it.
So with that in mind, with forgiveness, and we talked a little bit about earlier self-love and being at the root of this, what how does forgiveness relate to self-love?
Okay, well, forgiveness and self-love are really two sides of the same coin, because forgiveness as a blanket term, you forgive yourself and you forgive other people. There really isn't any difference in how it works. Although I know that we'll get to this later, because there are some energetic components that happen when you forgive other people that are a little different than when you forgive yourself. But it's still... when you forgive yourself, what happens is that your heart begins to open a little bit more. And then each time you forgive yourself and some kind of old mistake that you may have made that you're still angry about, that load drops away and your heart continues to open more. And it opens toward yourself and toward other people. Because as the Sufis say, I was a Sufi for many years, and as the Sufis say, it's like a swinging door. It goes outward or inward. And so when it's going outward, you're forgiving other people, and when it's going inward, you're forgiving yourself. But actually, at the deepest level, there's no difference.
Right?
Yeah.
That's my rule number 2, no separation.
Yes,
Okay?
yes.
We're all connected.
We are all connected, yes.
And that's what that I think helps with the forgiveness aspect too, is because what you kind of, when you remember that none of this is real, and that we're creating all of it, and that the person that you're fighting against is just you. You're like, what am I doing?
I know. It's like shadow boxing, you know.
And I actually use this process of self-forgiveness to cure myself of severe anxiety. I used to have that like anxiety where I would lay up at night just like reliving all of my embarrassing moments and like punishing myself over and over again. Like, remember when you were 7? That was dumb. What you said was so stupid.
I know.
And I used to do that. And so I came up with this like little practice. I was like, okay, in this situation, is there anything I could have done differently that would have changed the outcome? And I would say, if it was a yes, it would be like, okay, I agree to do that. The next time I forgive myself and I'm letting this go.
Brilliant.
And I would say, if it was a no, well, there was nothing you could do.
Yes.
Forgive yourself and let go. And then periodically I would just think purposely about the things that made me anxious and see if they still triggered me and do the process again.
Very good. Yeah.
And then it was gone.
Good.
And then I stopped doing that. Oh my God, what a relief.
It is.
No medication, just a little self-love.
A little self-love, yes. Forgiveness is like the best vitamin pill you can ever take, you know, the best self-nurturing medication you can ever do. And there is a thing about beating yourself up for mistakes, which is something I've indulged in. Almost every client I've ever worked with has indulged in. And what happens is that you're like digging yourself into a pit with every like, oh, how dumb that was. Why did I do that? I'm stupid, or, you know, whatever the toxic inner dialogue is. And then the deeper the pit, the harder it is to get out of, until you begin to realize, oh, this isn't real. And none of this actually happened when I understood the situation, and you begin to let yourself off the hook. Because the negative self-talk actually is one of the most toxic parts. It contributes to that congealed resentment that we all then, you know, most people carry. So I experienced the same thing, and you can torture yourself endlessly with all the mistakes.
That's how I stopped. That's how I started the anxiety work. Was I just realized like that voice is not my highest self. Like that's not a kind and loving voice.
Yes.
And it doesn't belong here. So I just started saying to it, shut up.
Yes.
I was just like, shut up, get out of here. You don't belong here. And it would stop. And then I got bold and I started doing the other stuff. I'm like, I'm in control here.
That's true. And then here's a scary thing that actually was a huge revelation to me. I thought when I listened to a voice, now this might sort of trigger people a little bit, but I thought when I listened to a voice that said, oh, you're stupid, or you can't do things right, or whatever, that it was a voice coming from me, but it wasn't necessarily my own voice. And when I was initially in the Sufi training, that was one of the first things that I learned. Not everything we think is true. In fact, a lot of the things that we think aren't true. It comes from some sort of dark energy that we've become vulnerable to because we're sort of hurting ourselves.
It feeds off the feeling that that thought elicits.
Yes,
and so,
it's like a magnet. It's like a magnet. Because there are, as you know, as a medium, there are all kinds of dark spirits and dark energies around just waiting to pounce. And by digging yourself into a dark pit over self-flagellation is a total open invitation. And it was one of the very first teachings that I got as a Sufi. When you start to open your heart to love, is that you have to stop listening to the stuff that's inside your head because it's not true. It was shocking to believe that.
I used to listen when I was a teenager. I was really into the Warrens and all the ghost hunting stuff, and that's when I learned that poltergeists were created by negative emotions, and so they often happen around teenage girls because they had so much of that
huge volcanoes.
Can you imagine that your feelings take on a life of their own and start throwing things around your house?
It's a terrifying thought.
Yeah,
really.
but yeah, it goes into that's how I learned it. My weird ghost hunting path. So with that being said, there's still a purpose for us making mistakes, right?
There is, yes, and that was, I'm glad you brought me back, because that's the other thing. We learn, theoretically speaking, we can learn a lot from our mistakes. There are certain mistakes I made in relationships, and I've heard this over and over from my clients, you know, but eventually, after you've made the same kind of mistake again and again, you wear it out. It's like, I'm not going to do this anymore. And look, like you said, you look back on it and think, well, what's going on here? And then it begins to become clear. And you're not a victim anymore of your own unconscious thought processes, and you stop making that particular mistake. Mistakes truly are a stepping stone to our success. They are. What I always am fascinated by is the process Thomas Edison went through when he was creating the filament for the light bulb. It kept burning out, and he had to find something that worked better. He had a list of about 10,000 different chemicals or substances, and he had to just go through each one to figure out, okay, those didn't work, and then this group didn't work, and he got closer and closer and closer, and eventually he hit upon the right substance that would make the filament continue to burn. And imagine if he had thought with each one, oh, I'm a failure, woe is me. We wouldn't have light bulbs, maybe.
You're just one step closer to success. That's what the failure is. And and people will ask me, well, how long is this pattern going to go on? How long is this going to keep happening to me? And I'm just like, as long as you want it to.
As long as you want it to. That's the other thing. You begin to realize when you're on this journey, that we actually are not victims of our emotions, that there are choices to be made. No, that's a whole other topic that we can get into. Yeah. Maybe that'll come up later. However, another thing that I learned, that's the purpose for the mistake, is I was moaning about one of my mistakes in a meditation with my guides. And I have this one guide who is very pointed with me. And she said, well, Sumaya, you incarnated at this time because this is the time of the Great Awakening, and you wanted a front row seat. You came to be here. But part of the contract is that you would live life as a human being. And part of being a human being is the path of the mistake. And she said, so basically, you've totally fulfilled your contract. And I thought, I'm not sure how I feel about that. She was sort of alluding to the fact that I have made a lot of mistakes, so I have learned a lot from them. So I think that mistakes are part of our humanity, and we need to treat them with love and compassion, and not, that's just it, They lead us forward.
Absolutely, and they're tremendous stimulus for growth. Mm-hmm. And you certainly remember the mistakes that they really stick with you, and they and eventually get to a point where it's not something that you're punishing yourself for, but something that actually I know what happens when I go this way. I know what happens when I let that emotion run away from me, and I'm gonna choose differently this time. Yes. And that's what being human is. We're human. Imperfection is the human condition. Yes. We fall from our own perfection in order to be here, and we're just striving to do better, but that doesn't mean we don't sometimes miss the mark, and that's really what a sin is to miss the mark. And so there's not a right or wrong, but there is a higher path that'll lead you back to yourself and to God, and you want to strive for that one, but sometimes you miss the mark, and that's okay.
Yes, and if you miss it enough, you gradually get closer and closer to where you hit the target. I love that sin is an archery term. Finally you hit the bullseye.
Yeah. Done with that one. So this going back into forgiveness. So we know that mistakes have a purpose, and but sometimes forgiveness can be really hard. We talked a little bit about this, but how do you forgive somebody that's really, really hurt you in your...
Yes. This is something that it took me a lot of deep work to understand the process. And here's what I came to, that if you have self-love, that it's impossible to hurt another human being, because to have self-love means your heart is open. You know, your heart is open to the world, it's out, and that love is flowing, and there's just no way you can be mean to someone. So if someone is mean and angry and they're behaving in a toxic way, it means they hate themselves, really. That they may seem arrogant and confident, but it's that puffed up kind of confidence that comes from, well, let's just say a lot of negative practices.
Yeah.
I won't go there too much, but, and so, if a person hurts you, it means that they weren't in a state of self-love. And they might even have been in a state of self-hate. Self-hate can masquerade and get covered over, and you don't even realize that, oh, this is the problem, you know, is self-hate. Partially because so many people have self-hate, and I didn't realize it when I had it, and it was governing a lot of my behavior. So that's step one, is to realize, okay, that person didn't have any self-love. They were living a tortured life because everything that they did was coming from a place of no self-love. And it's a very deeply painful way to live that causes people to act out badly. And when you realize that, then, and you can look at, okay, this person was experiencing this, they had these anxieties going, they had these pressures going on in their life, and then you begin to have more compassion. And once you have compassion for that person, the next step of forgiveness, unhooking and releasing, becomes so much easier, because you see them as just another human being, and you can see your own humanity in them, and it changes the whole dynamic. So
absolutely, that goes it's my rule number 7. All you need is love, and love is all you need.
Yes.
And because when you love yourself completely, you're not bringing in these people that are reflecting
right.
these things to you. And when people love themselves completely, they're not doing things to hurt other people. And I actually grew up around a lot of very strong personalities, and my sisters were real tough and defensive, and people were scared of them, to be honest. I mean, I was like a little delicate flower next to them, and I would explain to them, I said, well, you don't understand, they're just very sensitive. I said, they just feel a lot.
Very good.
They're just sensitive, like they're really kind, and this is just their defense mechanism, this anger, and then just give it a chance and it'll melt. And so yeah, people can really come from that wounded place, and when you love yourself completely, you don't take it personally.
Yes.
You don't, it doesn't,
right.
It's not like a personal attack on you. You just feel like, oh my gosh, like,
it's them.
What can I do?
Yeah, it's them.
Yeah.
It's like you realize, I can see that far more clearly now, but before, when I was more wounded myself, and I see this with my clients, the hurt hooks something in them, you know, and so that's when you're off to the races. You know, you have a matching hurt place. Yeah, and so it's sort of like the Velcro, you know, little hooks in the fabric.
It's hard to learn, especially when you have empathy, right?
Yeah.
That's something that I had to really learn how to navigate in this world, and I think a lot of people are doing that now, where other people's feelings felt very personal to me because I could feel them. And like, so if someone was angry around me, it felt like that I was the target of that anger, when really they were just in a mood, and like they were allowed to have their private feelings. And so it took me a long time to kind of differentiate between what was me and what was someone else. So speaking about energy, because that's a huge part of what's going on here, we're all just sharing energetic space together. What happens when you forgive someone? What happens energetically?
Well, this was a big surprise to me. It goes back to Saint Germain and the Violet Flame and all that work that I did, and I have seen this happen not only in my own experience with everyone I've ever worked with, whether it's in a group or it's individual work. And when I discovered this because I did, as I described, I forgave all these people month after month after month. I sat in meditation, I processed the conveyor belt, and I began to feel so energized. I was running around my house like, wow, life is wonderful, and just felt so overflowing. And I had a deep connection with Saint Germain, and I said, well, what's going on? And he said, well, when you forgive somebody, you actually cut the cord between you and them. It's like, and that cord was sort of a toxic energy that was going back and forth. And so when you cut it, all that energy gets recycled, and it is now available for you as life energy, as creative energy, as love energy, however you decide to use it. It's there. It's no longer stuck in the basement somewhere as a congealed rock, and it's melted and now is available. And he said, so when you cut that cord, that's what happens. And then he further explained something that I found fascinating, and I love it because it's that quantum entanglement thing, that he said, when you forgave those people, you freed not only yourself, but you freed a lot of people. I'm sort of feeling teary-eyed thinking about this. So it was such a big revelation at that time, because this was a number of years ago. And wow, so they were, without even realizing it, in some subtle way held hostage to my lack of forgiveness, that they were carrying something too from what happened between us. And in ways that I haven't still completely understood, I know that when I unhooked them, they were free. And so we hear these stories all the time that people talk about, oh, I forgave so-and-so, I let go, and then the next day they get a phone call from this very person they hadn't seen or heard from in 20 years. And the person says, you know, I was thinking of you, and I realized I felt so bad about what happened between us. And you're thinking, oh my God, this is real. you know? So that I've heard so many stories like that, just, you know, spontaneously volunteered in groups. We are all connected. And where we go one, we go all. It really is true.
I love that. And that's something I work with my clients on too. And especially when they're in like a really heated situation with somebody, the wonderful news is that you don't have to change the other person to change the experience. All you have to change is you and your own perspective, and you'll have a different experience with this person.
Yes.
And also with people that are not so much into the self-love and have like issues with worthiness, I find a lot of them are very nurturing to others. And so when I explain to them that when you spend the energy to heal yourself, you're creating a template for others to follow.
Yes.
And so so if you can't do it for you, do it for everyone else.
Right. This is very much true, because humanity shares a morphic field, and we're all in this together. We're here at the time of the Great Awakening, and any person's enlightenment or healing goes into the morphic field for everyone to benefit from. It's like adding more light to the Christmas tree or something like that. And then as more and more lights appear in that morphic field, I think of it as almost a cosmic web, and there are lights where all the places where the web crosses over between the vertical and the horizontal lines like a big net. And as more lights come online, we all feel it. We all get it, you know. And if you're ready to get healed over a particular situation, and thousands of people have healed that, it's a boost.
Absolutely.
You know? It's like a booster vitamin. So
it can help so much. And so many people ask me, well, what can I do to help us move and change the world? And it's like, well, when you put positive emotions out and you raise your vibration and your light, that is actually helping us, because the more we do that, the less the things that we don't prefer about this reality
Yes.
can be in existence. And so we just create a place that's so light that those things don't exist. So it
Yes.
sounds like it's a good time for everybody to do some emotional detoxing.
Yes.
To do a little spring
It
clean.
is.
And so tell us a little bit more about the metaphysical and spiritual understanding behind forgiveness and self-love.
Well, if you truly love yourself, it does mean that you have come into alignment with your soul. Now, soul is one of those terms that shows up in a lot of spiritual traditions, but you could call it really your higher self. And what I love is a term that the Stargate Academy uses, which is your superconsciousness, because that takes it out of a theological realm. And we here in 3D, in our physical plane, is just a tiny aspect of who we really are. We're doing the shadow boxing down here, and it's all a dream. We think it's real. But then in the higher dimensions, you might even say in the quantum realm, which is the realm of pure potential, our superconscious selves exist. And often, the more self-love and forgiveness you can do, the more of a divine connection starts happening. The more awareness you have of that higher, pure love self that is existing on the quantum realm and is constantly aware of you, but we're not always aware of that. And so as you train your awareness, you unclog the pipe. All the gunk has gotten cleared out of the channels. And all of a sudden, you begin to feel a connection with that higher part of yourself that only knows love. And when that happens, that's really, you're on your ascension path. You've gotten very close, because this is really where we're all headed. Like you were saying, all you need is love. Love is all there is, love is all there is. We should have that playing in the background.
Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful song.
So that's part of it. It's coming into alignment with your highest and deepest self. And a lot of people talk about raising your vibration, and I think this is the ultimate goal of raising your vibration, is to continually be in a state of awareness and connection with that highest and deepest self that only knows love. And the journey to getting there is doing what we've been talking about, clearing out self-love, what blocks self-love and forgiveness. Yeah,
that's wonderful. I like to think of self-love as, or I'll explain it in this way. It's not familial love or romantic love, which is kind of one of those things that has people spinning out in this reality, looking for their twin flames.
Yes.
But it's
Right.
source love.
Yeah.
It's a whole different kind of love, and that really does bring you into that to that connection. And so any final thoughts on self-love?
Yes. I think of, one of the things that has become clear to me is that our hearts, and here I'm talking about the heart chakra, the center here, but as well as our physical heart, which is part of that field. Our physical heart is an extraordinary organ that has been greatly misunderstood. It's not just this thing that pumps blood. And it's has many abilities. Now, our hearts are actually a light source, and it's so exciting because now they're beginning to understand from a scientific point of view that there are, what are the photons? There are photons in the heart. And what the Sufis talk about is that as your heart is a light source, we come in with our hearts as a light source. But then what happens if you beat yourself up and you have a lot of sadness and pain happen throughout your life? And this happens, depending on your family situation and issues of race and class and how you look and, a million other things, how you're treated. That light source gets covered over, and we think of it as a veil. It's like the dance of the seven veils is really taking off the veils to reveal the light. And so the veils get added to the light source and covers up the light. And pretty soon we forget that we are light. And so the journey of self-love really is about removing the veils one by one. Or sometimes you can read whole clumps of them with just one sudden realization, and all the rest of them fall away. Everyone's experience is different. And so then when you are shining your light, everything changes. You become unstoppable. Your confidence becomes so deep that it's way deep in your center, it's soul deep. And it's not blown away by things that happen in the world that could be upsetting and rock your confidence. Soul deep confidence isn't like that, because you know your own light. You're connected to your own light, and you're connected to that higher, deeper part of yourself, that super consciousness. So that is kind of the cosmic view of self-love.
That's beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful. I've always been attracted to the dance of the seven veils, the story of Salome, and how each one of the veils is an illusion dropping, and I don't think about the light that shines at the end, and you do, when the more you love yourself, you get to that point where everything's okay. Like even just your daily routine down here on the ground, like everything's okay, and you're just happy all the time. And the wonderful thing is that no matter how many veils you're still wearing, all the work that you do to drop them each day, you feel a little better and a little better. And also there are things that get unlocked at that vibration of light when there's not the veil over you that a lot of people, I think, are striving for in this reality. And I do teach people, like, again, with communication, but I say 90% of this is emotional. And the more you love yourself, getting closer to that point, you become this vessel for the divine to speak through. And we're actually moving into, there's a higher heart. And that's why I actually like this. I'm attracted to this color right now, because this is the color of the higher heart. Because you have the green and the blue, and when you move into the higher heart, you speak with that love. And you share that love everywhere you go, whether you're just radiating it or it's coming out in your words. And so I love this, like, this whole embracing of self-love and opening of the heart, and that's really what we're doing right now. And so this is perfect for this summit about where we are, where we're going, how do we get there. This is how we get there. What else can people do to grow their self-love?
Well, I'm going to bring up the M word. It's meditation. Everybody goes, no, I don't anything but that. I can't meditate. My mind's too busy. Well, everybody's mind is too busy. That's sort of the whole thing. However, there are a lot of ways that you can work with self-love, and I'd like to step back just a little bit, because there is an understanding about what happens in our minds. And I had to be a Sufi for 16 years to get some of this. And then before that, I had to be a Tibetan Buddhist for 10 years to get this. I was like a tough case, It took me a long time, and hours and hours of sitting on that cushion, going, to meditate. But one of the deepest teachings that I learned was that with every thought that comes up, we have an opportunity to choose enlightened mind, or, as my old Tibetan teacher used to say, neurotic mind. And you can look at that, you can choose love or you can choose fear. You can choose an enlightened experience, or you can choose a difficult, painful one. And that's true every single thought in every moment. We have that choice. But mostly what happens is we miss the choice point, because life happens really fast. And if your mind is racing around through 1,000 different things, you miss the choice point. And the value of meditation is that you finally conquer the monkey mind, and that's another whole discussion. I could do a series of talks on that. And you conquer the monkey mind, and you begin to get quieter inside. The inner dialogue isn't so serious. It's not one thought after another, wall-to-wall thoughts. There are spaces between the thoughts after you've meditated a while. And in those spaces, there is an opportunity to catch that choice point. And I had a hard time understanding this, but what happens when you catch it, then you have the opportunity to say, I'm going to do something different this time. I'm not going to react in that old way. I'm going to switch and do this way. So I'll just give an example. The first time I recognized the choice point was, I'll never forget it. It was one of those life-changing things that just sticks like a movie, you know, in my mind. I had a habit of being very annoyed when I was driving, that people would cut me off while I would drive, and I would secretly swear at them behind the wheel. And even we spiritual type people can do this from time to time. And when that would happen, it was a knee-jerk reaction. But after a lot of meditating, my mind had cleared out a little bit, and I noticed, something's just stopped. I didn't go into the knee-jerk reaction, getting angry or irritated. And it was just a nanosecond, and I caught it, and I thought, oh, wow, this is it. This is what they're talking about. And I made the choice to say, oh, they're probably just in a hurry, you know, it's nothing important. And I released it and let it go. I didn't get mad. That was such a major milestone and turning point for me, and I began to see the value in not hooking into the old weight of the karmic pattern. The old habitual thought patterns will tend to always pull us in a particular direction if that's what we're used to. And that reaction is there, bam, it's really fast. But through spiritual practices, and I think singing, dancing, meditation, all these things, each person has to find their own way, but for me, meditation was it, because it helped me clear out the busyness of my mind so that I actually had enough space, enough enough gaps between the long string of thoughts, like the ticker tape, you know, that runs through. And so that's the importance, to realize we're not a victim of our habitual thoughts. We're not a victim of our karma. When you get clear enough to recognize your choice point, and you can make the choice toward love, toward a more enlightened response, toward self-love, toward forgiveness, whatever it is in that moment, then you're on your way. It's a huge game changer.
I absolutely love that you're bringing in the choice factor and trading the choice or trading the habit for a choice. And I was actually working with somebody, and she was telling me, like, well, I just want to know when I'm going to be fixed. And I said, well, first of all, you're not broken.
Right.
You're not broken. And what's going on here is that you're choosing from pain. You're choosing from a wound instead of choosing from love for yourself. And you can change that choice. You can change who you are at any time. And there is only the eternal now moment. Yes. And you get to choose who you are in that moment. Yes. You don't have to live in the past. You don't have to live in the future. You can make the choice, and that's so much more empowering than thinking life just happens to you. Yes. And so I love that. And I love doing the kind of singing and dancing. And I do that every day. I sing and dance. And I get up in the morning. I'm not typically a morning person. It's my go-to time of the day. But now, you know, when I'm making my chai, I'm dancing it out. I'm excited about starting my day. I start each day with gratitude, reminding myself all the things that I'm grateful for. Yes. And I find that all of these things remind me to stay in that joyous place and to really love myself
Beautiful.
and even like sometimes I'll be looking in the mirror and I start to pick at myself, you know.
Yeah, right.
Vanity is one of the things I inherited from my mother, and and then and I stop myself and I look at myself again and I'll say, "You are so beautiful.
Yeah.
God, I love you."
Yes.
And
Yes.
like, there's so many ways to kind of change these things. So, and also for people that have a hard time sitting in silence and in meditation, because that's something that people I think struggle with in our modern world of overstimulation.
It's true.
You can also meditate in motion. You don't have to be a stillness meditator.
Yes.
You can meditate. I did dance for many, many years, and that was my form of meditation. Or singing is now my form of meditation. Or I get a lot of really powerful feelings from running and hiking. And so we don't all have to be as good as Sumaya sitting on that pillow for 16 years.
I know. I have to tell you, I was my own worst case. So I figured I can teach anybody to meditate after what I've experienced.
Oh, that's wonderful. I like but all it comes is all just a willingness. A willingness to change the perspective, to stop running the same programs, and to embrace self-love. So with all of that being said, thank you for sharing all of this amazing information with us. Also, Sumaya's going to be joining us at the Seven Seals Summit Bridge of Light, and she'll be going into some of these practices and sharing a little more of her wisdom that she can't put into just 1 hour.
Yes.
So anything you'd like to say in closing to the people watching about self-love, forgiveness, and
It's the journey worth taking. It's the thing that will be your biggest healer. However you do it, whether you do it through singing and dancing or meditating or crazy spiritual practices like I've done, it is the thing that will heal yourself and will help us all heal the planet. Because this is where we're going. We are in the time of the Great Awakening, and we are all participants in hoping that to happen. And if you're sitting at home thinking, well, what can I do? I'm not an activist or whatever. Well, this is what you can do, because this feeds everyone. It adds more light to the Christmas tree.
I love it.
So.
Well, guys, this has been a wonderful chat. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. This is Sumaya O'Grady. I'm the Divine Miss M, Megan Martinez. This is a wonderful addition to the Seven Seals Summit, Gateway to the New Earth. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing those of you in person who are coming to Seven Seals Summit Bridge of Light this May. Thank you again, Sumaya, for that wonderful talk. And now, everybody, Sumaya is going to lead us in a beautiful meditation called Build the Flame of Love.
Yeah. All right. Get into a comfortable position. And just connect with your heart. And when I say heart, I mean the chakra, the heart chakra that's in the center of your chest. And this chakra field includes your physical heart, which is also an amazing, important part of this meditation. So place your hand on your heart and breathe in, just in and out, just a little more slowly and a little more deeply. And do this at your own timing. Take 3 or 4 nice breaths, because this is really about heart coherence. And this is an act of love that you give yourself, as there's really nowhere to go and nothing to do. Just be. Close your eyes and go ahead. Get started. Now think of something that you're grateful for. Whatever pops into your thoughts, and feel the energy of that gratitude. Let that good feeling of the gratitude, which is a power and a light, and let it flash through your entire body. And now call yourself home by silently and lovingly speaking your name right into your heart 3 times. Think of someone that you love and appreciate. This could be someone in your life. It could even be your pet, your cat or your dog. Whoever comes into your mind. And really let yourself feel your love and appreciation for that being or animal. It's a warm feeling usually, and let that warmth move all through your body as a flash. It just moves everywhere and fills you. Now for support and guidance for the next part of our meditation, call on your guides and angels. For example, I call on Yeshua, also known as Jesus, and I call on Mother Mary. They're 2 of my guides, and they're certainly available to join you in this meditation. And if you don't have guides, if you're not certain what that might be, think of someone who you love and trust who's already passed over into the spirit realm. Perhaps it's someone that's a much loved relative or mentor. And know that they are there as support and to lend you light and guidance. And now you'll establish contact with that larger part of you, that superconscious part of you that exists in the quantum realm, in the highest dimension, which only knows love. It's your higher self or your soul. And that part of you is still you, because you exist on many dimensions. And your superconscious self is a vast reservoir of unconditional love. So you can call on that to receive that unconditional love. You'll connect to it by consciously calling, first of all, calling from your heart. And it might help you to see it to see the call as a visual. It's like almost placing a phone call, and see it as a beautiful silver cord that stretches from your heart all the way. Think of it as up into a higher dimension, and connecting with your superconscious heart, the purest, highest aspect of your being. You can think of it as a cosmic phone line, that you're establishing that connection. And this silver cord can expand and get wider and wider to accommodate as much flow as you want. And this superconscious heart doesn't know anything about mistakes or what you've done or haven't done. It only knows love. So consciously call for it to send love down through that communication line and let it go right into your heart center. And each time you breathe in and out, more and more flow comes in because you've called it. Just take a moment to feel that flow or to see it however that works for you. Continue breathing in and out, feeling the flow. And at first, it might feel like something warm that grows in your heart. It's a little different for everyone. But as you allow this to happen and you treat yourself to this, that flame of love begins to grow in your heart. You're feeding it. When you are building a fire out in your fireplace, you start with kindling and you gradually build the fire until you can add more and more to it, and eventually it becomes a very strong flame. And this is what you're doing here. You're letting the flame of love in your heart be fed by this connection to your superconscious heart. So just enhance the flow now. Let more and more come in if you would like to. And let your heart get filled and filled and filled. And bask in the flame of that love. Bask in the unconditional love that is now filling. So much so that the love is percolating as the heart overflows. It's percolating all through your body, all through your head and your brain, through your arms and legs, filling all through your organs. And just feel that or imagine it. Because imagination is true. And savor the feeling of being filled with the flame of love. And knowing that your heart is the place where it emanates from. And that you can always reconnect to this experience by remembering any time in your life to connect to your superconscious heart. Start the flow of love and let it fill you. If you practice this, it can happen really fast and easy. So as I bring the meditation to a close, we'll do this with 3 breaths. Breathe in and out. Feel your body wherever you're sitting or lying. Breathe in and out. Gently open your eyes and look around the room. Notice the colors. And breathe in and out. Wiggle your fingers and toes, and to feel fully back in the room and back in your physical body, fully aware and relaxed. Thank you for joining me in building the flame of love in your heart.